Let me guess. You like Star Wars. You know, I've been in other movies. But you don't care about those, do you? I have one thing to say to people like you. I like Star Wars too.
Welcome to the Galactic Core Podcast. Here to review the latest films and TV shows from all your favorite intergalactic universes. Now, it's time to get your geek on. Please welcome your host, the prophesized chosen one. It's Andy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Galactic Core Podcast. I am here for a very special episode today. We've had some quite upsetting news the last week in our sort of arena, I guess, and that is the passing of James Earl Jones. 93 years old. The man has had an incredible life and has been the voice behind some of the most iconic characters of all time, really, in theatre, in film. And so I'm here to celebrate that and talk about, obviously, the voice of Darth Vader, that absolutely iconic role. So I'm here to discuss that today and just have a quick celebration of the life of James Earl Jones. And I've got a guest here to do that with me today, and I know that he really wanted to do this. I appreciate that he agreed sort of last minute in a way to jump on and do this with me. But everyone, please welcome to the show from Krypton to Alderaan. It's Joey. Hi, Joey. How you doing?
Hello, I'm doing all right. How are you? Congrats, fatherhood.
Yes, thank you very much. I have been on a break recently, a bit of a hiatus. Took about a month or so off. I was going to come back about a week or so ago, but I decided to take a little bit longer to spend a little bit more time with my family before sort of jumping back to the podcast. But this was something that, given the news this week, I really wanted to jump in and do a quick episode about. So, Joey, I really appreciate you jumping on last minute, buddy, to come and do this with me. But how are you? I know you've been having a little bit of a break from the podcast yourself. How's things on your end?
Yeah, things are good. Krypton to Alderaan saw a lot of growth earlier this year, and
Nice.
I've been very excited about that and very humbled by that and very surprised, as much as like that's always the goal of anyone doing this stuff. But it was, it was really, really nice to see. But it came in like a whirlwind. And so, after the Acolyte doing a few things here and there, but taking a bit of a breather and sort of getting our legs back underneath us to go on to the next thing until we got a couple months till Skeleton Crew. So we got to figure out something else to talk about on Krypton to Alderaan.
I was going to say, is there anything else in the meantime that you sort of got your eye on that you're looking forward to that you're going to be talking about on your show?
Yeah, we have a list. We haven't narrowed it specifically down, but there's so many things we want to talk about. I mean, like Avatar, The Last Airbender, the live action series. I never talked about that and wanted to bring people on. X-Men 97, of course. There's no limit, and there's no. It's not like we're going to run out of things. It's just like picking the next thing to talk about. So that's the stage we're at. But there's a long list of topics for sure.
Are you a Lord of the Rings fan at all? Have you been watching the Rings of Power?
I am a Lord of the Rings fan. I have not been watching season 2 of Rings of Power yet. We do like a group watch, my partner and I, with a couple of other people, and our schedules just haven't meshed yet. But I've heard that it's quote unquote better than season 1 so far. However many 4 episodes in now, I think. Have you been watching it?
Yeah, I'm about 2 episodes in. I'm a little bit behind. Obviously, the little one tends to dominate the viewing schedule of the amount of time we have to watch stuff, to be fair. I'm about 2 episodes in. I think because we're recording this on a Thursday, I think episode maybe 5 has dropped today as well. So only about three or more to go, and I think it's the end of the series. So yeah, definitely one I'm watching. Obviously, we've got Agatha All Along is dropping in I think maybe next week, if memory serves as well. Obviously, that's top top of everyone's list to talk about and watch as well, isn't it? So maybe not. But anyway, but yeah, Rings of Power is something I'm going to be covering, and probably I was going to do it as my sort of return, but I'll probably do it once it comes to an end, and maybe the same with Agatha as well. We'll see how we get on with that. But I'm looking forward to Skeleton Crew. I've got a big sort of collab planned to review that show when it pops up. And if you wanted to see and listen to a bit more of Jerry, apart from heading onto his podcast and obviously getting to watch and listen to his show, you were recently a guest on Clan Brandalorian's podcast as well. So make sure you head over to his. Everyone knows, massive friend of the show. So make sure you pop over there and have a look at that episode. That was a great episode as well. But we are here for one particular reason. As sad as the news absolutely has been, we're here to celebrate the life of James Earl Jones and his absolutely iconic role as the voice of Darth Vader. Absolutely, I don't really mourn the passing of celebrities, if I'm honest. It's not something that I sort of get enamored with or get sucked into. But I really got choked up and quite emotional when I literally saw the post. I think it was about 2 minutes after it got posted. It just happened to be on my Instagram feed, and I saw it and got up and told the wife straight away and got really choked up about it. That's how much of an impact James Earl Jones has had as an actor, as a person around it, and obviously the role of Darth Vader for me personally is a character that I love so much that it had, him passing has had that much of an effect on me. So obviously, how were you feeling about it, Joey, when you heard the news?
Yeah, it's like you're saying, in the celebrity world, this news gets a little. It gets weird getting it like a celebrity passing as an audience member or a civilian out in the world. It's just, I've always felt weird that it's like a big news thing, but it is an iconic. I mean, it's an iconic bit of news from a extremely iconic individual who, like the clip you showed up front, also just loved, Star Wars. And of course my first introduction to him probably isn't even Lion King. It probably is Darth Vader, in Star Wars. So yeah, huge loss. I mean, just a huge loss of a super icon in this fandom of this thing that we love so much. I
mean, we associate him so much, obviously, with being the Mufasa or Darth Vader, but the guy's been all over, and he's one of these rare people that's won sort of a unique band of awards. I mean, he's won Emmys, he's won Tony Awards, he won a Grammy Award, he's won a Golden Globe, he won Screen Actors Guild Lifetime Achievement Award, an Academy Honorary Award. This guy is so much more than the voice of Darth Vader or Mufasa, but the impact that the guy has had on us, that's what we're here to discuss. The impact he's had on us through his role as Darth Vader, and the impact that is then had for the fandom. Because at the end of the day, where would Star Wars be without Darth Vader?
Right.
It wouldn't have probably got off the ground if it wasn't for Darth Vader in the originals. I mean, it's famous that he only had something like 12 minutes of screen time in the original Star Wars film, yet he had such a rippling effect through sci-fi from that moment onwards, and just the voice as well. I mean, I was very, very lucky enough to get a signed Darth Vader picture, along with Bob Anderson, who, if you don't know who Bob Anderson is, he was the guy who was the stunt guy for Darth Vader. So anytime Darth Vader has a lightsaber battle in any of the films, in the original trilogy, that's who is in the suit. But yeah, managing to get James Earl Jones to sign a picture of Darth Vader there is such a highlight, and something I'm going to cherish even more now, to be fair. But when you hear that iconic Vader voice, how old were you, Joe, when you first watched Star Wars? Do you remember?
Ooh, good question. I don't have a good recollection of this, but that's the first thing. The Luke, I am your father is something that people, not even fans of Star, it's just known. It's just ubiquitous. It's just inherently part of our culture and the zeitgeist. And so just that line, and obviously kids always walking around doing the breathing noises of Darth Vader. He was just iconic in every way. And I don't know how old I was when I first watched Star Wars. I love Star Wars, but for Vader and James Earl Jones creating this villain that and this redemption arc and a character that's still like, I buy Vader comics to this day because the story is so compelling and rooted all in that, A New Hope. But teaching me that villains are the most compelling of the characters. Like, the heroes are great and all that stuff, but they're, there is more often than not, the heroes are pretty one-dimensional. But seeing, Vader was the first villain that really showed me that this is an extremely compelling character. It's just completely ominous presence, and we don't see anything. It's just a suit and a voice, and the voice is what made the villain and the character and everything that we have gotten since then. I mean, obviously, for taking it from the original trilogy through even the animated stuff, Star Wars Rebels, and it just everything, all every time we see Vader, I mean, we just associate the two. We just associate James Earl Jones with Vader now, right? And like you said, you have a signature from the stunt double. Something like 4 people played Vader in the original trilogy. But yeah, James Earl Jones bringing that character, making that villain compelling to me, but also setting up the idea that villains are deep, rich, compelling characters.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember stories that George Lucas has said that James Earl Jones is in a recording booth and he's like, I want to know more about Vader's backstory. Tell me more, because I want to put some life into this character, not just be a voice for this character. And I remember George Lucas saying he was always impressed with that because he wants to bring a richness to the character that isn't just his deep, booming voice. He wants to love the character. He wants to bring that to life, even if he's disconnected in a way because he's not physically playing that character. He is just a voice at the end of the day. But as we've already said, and we're going to say many times, you can't have Darth Vader without his voice now. I had an ex who was Spanish, and she always used to say that because when she grew up, she watched the Spanish dub. And so the person that did like the Spanish Darth Vader voice is the person that she associates with Darth Vader, which I suppose I didn't really think about that, being the fact that we're English speakers, so to speak. But so I guess it's different for other people, but still worldwide, this is the voice that is synonymous with it. I remember, I think I was about maybe 7 or so when I watched my first Star Wars film, and just Vader being the standout and the voice being the big standout thing for me. It wasn't necessarily about Luke or Han or Leia or anything like that. It was about it. And like you said, the fact that the villains are the most compelling characters, or they tend to be anyway. Heroes are pretty cut and dry for the most part. There's not too much emotional depth. They're not overly complicated in a way. They're just like, I want to do the right thing. Let's go and do the right thing. And they have a bit of trouble along the way. But the villains are the ones that tend to have the more complicated backstory. And James loved playing into that from what I can see anyway. So it's a shame that he never got to meet all the cast when he was doing the films, because he got to sit in a recording studio. That clip I showed at the start from The Big Bang Theory, obviously later in that episode, we get a little appearance from Carrie Fisher as well. And I remember James telling a story that they never got to meet in the original trilogy when it was filmed, because they were just never on set together. And apparently they were like, they were getting ready to shoot this scene, and they saw each other from across the room. And like James Earl Jones shouted like, Carrie, and apparently Carrie Fisher turned around and goes, Dad, and just like runs up to him and gives him a big hug. So even so many years after it, the cast is still having fun with each other about that. So
yeah,
what is it in particular though that really? I mean, I guess it is just the tone of voice and the sound of the voice, is it, that James has for the Vader character that really gives it sort of, I'm trying to think of the right word to describe it, but it's just
gravity,
encapsulates.
presence.
Yeah, the gravitas for it, I think, is a great word for it.
Yeah.
I mean, what sort of impact has this then had for you on Vader as a character and your love for Star Wars? Because I know you are a big Star Wars fan, you're a big Star Wars nerd. And Vader, like we've already said, it has to be synonymous with Star Wars. There is no Star Wars, or what Star Wars would not even close to be the same if it wasn't for Vader in it. So what kind of impact has Vader had on you and your love for Star Wars and sci-fi?
Yeah, I think again, like setting up the idea. I love villains now. I mean, it's just the villains are always, you know, it influenced how I perceive sci-fi and the, you know, the degree to which I like try to connect with the villain of the story. At least try to dive deep into motivations and the gravity of that themselves. And I really think, you know, Star Wars is always at the foundation of the love of my love for all of this stuff. And of course, then James Earl Jones is like that point for me with villains elsewhere. And I think like you said, he's been in a lot of stuff and he's done a lot of stuff. But I think that his voice is so iconic that his voice was always also a character in these other things that he was in, even when he was physically acting in the, Coming to America and all the movies that he's done where his like physical person is in it. His voice was always also a character just because of the amount of gravity and force that it had. So again, like just a disembodied voice in Star Wars, but made that husk a character and an extremely compelling character. And I think there's there's been interviews where James Earl Jones was talking about, I think like George Lucas's direction and George Lucas not wanting him to like have inflections or emote, and it had to be very like stoic and robotic, but still what he brings to it is incredible. And there's still lines that he says that I get goosebumps. I mean, obviously I've seen like every Star Wars movie a million times, but I still get goosebumps at certain things.
Yeah.
And just I owe Star Wars a lot, and that it starts with people like James Earl Jones. Like he set up a lot of what I love about the stuff that I love, I guess, is probably the best / most confusing way to put it.
I know what you mean. Vader / Anakin, probably my favorite sci-fi character of all time. I mean, people want to call me cliche or that I'm boring because I love Vader as my number one sort of all-time character. I don't really care, but to be honest about people saying about that. Because once we've had the prequels and everything rolled in together, obviously I start to view Anakin Vader as sort of one but obviously person. You can separate them into two lives in a way, but to me it's one. And I've always said that the tragedy of Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader is the greatest Shakespearean tragedy of all time. It's such an iconic story. The guy that was a slave at pretty much every point of his life to someone, and at the end gave all of that up and freed himself to not really, it wasn't even thinking about fulfilling a prophecy. It was all about saving his son in the end. But it starts with the voice. You can get captivated with Vader because of how he looks or because he's got a red lightsaber, but I think the thing that draws you in has to be the voice at the start. Without that voice there, because I've watched different foreign dubs and the voice I just can't with their voices, because I'm just like, it's not the voice. So it all starts the story of, for me, of getting into the character and what I love about it. And because you say, even if he's been told to be stoic and be more robotic and not so emotional, he puts that emotion into it, especially the more you get through that original trilogy. Obviously, there's the showdown with Luke in Empire Strikes Back, when he reveals obviously the truth of who he is. There's a certain normality in his voice there as well. But then when you move on to the scenes in Return of the Jedi that he has with Luke Skywalker, and you can feel that emotion in his voice of he's sort of cracking, and the way that James just does that to take it from this stoic robotic person or this evil, supposedly evil villain, to someone who is the cracks are starting to show in his villainy and everything like that because of his son. And it's just a great moment. I think it's when Luke gives himself up to Vader on the moon of Endor, before he takes him up to meet the Emperor, and he's chatting about it. He's like, looks like I can feel the good in you. It's still there. And he's just like, it's too late for me, son. And you can just feel the voice going. And to me, that's what gets me about it as well, is the performance is not just about being a scary man in a black costume. Right. It's the progression of it and how James Earl Jones did that as well. And you had that in with the story of Anakin before, and it makes to me the most iconic character of all time, and the best story of all time. I don't care if it makes me boring. I don't care if there's more complex characters out there for you. I don't think they get too much more complex than Anakin, especially when you throw in the prequels, the Clone Wars TV series, and then the original trilogy as well. So, and that all starts with James Earl Jones. We're obviously been concentrating on the fact that he's the voice of Darth Vader and what that's meant to us. Obviously, he's been in so much other stuff. Is there anything that he, outside of Star Wars, that he was in that really hits a note for you as well, or that you really loved? I mean, the most iconic thing is obviously being the voice of Mufasa. What else was it? Field of Dreams. Obviously, you got an Oscar nomination for as well. So, anything outside of Star Wars that he really sort of hits home for you?
Good question. I mentioned Coming to America. There's also just like his presence in that, his just gravity is, I think, so good. So good, and then also such a great juxtaposition to the comedy of the movie. I really enjoy him in that. I'm scrolling through his filmography. Yeah, I mean, of everything I've seen that has had him or his voice in it, aside from Star Wars, I mean, he, like we've said, he's been in some great stuff. There's a lot of these I haven't seen actually, so I'm not too sure about some of them. But yeah, I mean, Lion King is also just so iconic, and also just like a huge gravity of a role. At Field of Dreams, yeah, like you mentioned. So there's just, I mean, he was just great. He was really good at what he did. And what he did was like bringing his acting ability and his voice. I think that was clear again in every role that he had, that his voice was also part of it. And but it's like we've said, it's hard to not think about Star Wars, because that is the most iconic of the roles in our, in your and my world, with what we try to do here on the internet, to the point where, as you were saying, listen, don't let anybody tell you that it's boring or it's basic to like Vader. He's a great villain. Star Wars has a few really great complex villains, and it's like him, Maul, and I would argue Kamir from The Acolyte. And so he's at the top, and his story is just getting like more complex if you continue to like read the comic books, and stuff like that. And if you read the comic books and you read his like speech bubbles, and you don't hear it in James Earl Jones's voice, like that's how infiltrated it is in all of this. I can hear it as I'm reading the comic books, like reading it in his voice. So just prevalent. It'll never go away. And I just, so grateful for his contribution to like the world in general, and to people who like could look up to him and see themselves in his being a successful a very successful actor, stage and movie, and just what he brought to Star Wars. And he continued to love it, or at least that's what they made him say in The Big Bang Theory.
I mean, yeah, absolutely spot on, to be fair. I mean, I'm the same when I read the comics. I absolutely read it in his voice. There's no other way to read it, to be fair. And as you also mentioned, it does make it adds to the complexity of the character through some of the things that he goes through, and trying to bring Padme back from the dead and then visiting her grave in different points. James Earl Jones, one of the few people to have technically, well, I say appeared, but obviously voice acted in each trilogy as well, at one point or another. He only did a few lines at the end of Revenge of the Sith when Anakin actually gets into the suit, including the classic "No."
Right.
Love it, love or hate that line either way. It's in there. And obviously only really sort of one line in the sequel trilogy, which I believe is in The Rise of Skywalker, when Kylo Ren goes to see Palpatine right at the very start, and he tells him that he's every voice he's ever heard inside his head. And James Earl Jones did record the Vader line for that as well. So one of the very, very few people outside of Ian McDiarmid, I guess, to have performed in, and obviously maybe C-3PO to be in all three trilogies. Yeah. And obviously Rogue One as well. So
yeah. And as recent as like the Jedi video games and Obi-Wan, the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, which again, like, regardless, I really enjoyed the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, and Vader's presence, both physical and the voice in that show, is like, that is Vader. That I really, really enjoyed Vader in that series. And, obviously James Earl Jones was a lot of it.
I mean, I hope I'm 100% correct in saying this, but I'm pretty sure that he obviously did record the lines, and they used sort of AI to make it sort of younger and more stronger. Because I think you can maybe tell in Rogue One that the voice wasn't quite as strong as it was maybe 30, 40 years ago to do the Vader voice, and so they did obviously enhance it a bit for the Kenobi series. But yeah, like you said, he obviously voiced him in Rebels a couple of times as well. So he's done some, like you said, some of the video stuff, and obviously come back for Kenobi. So the man has been so synonymous that you can't really do it, and people get heavily criticized in the video games or anything like that if they obviously they've been brought on to do Vader's voice and they don't get close to it. So I think the guy that's been in it, that did what was it, Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, did a pretty good job, to be fair. So, but
I see. I didn't even know that, honestly. So this is on me for not looking this up. I thought that was, James Earl Jones. I was just, in my mind, it was just like, oh, obviously he did these games because he always comes back and does it. So
unfortunately, I don't think he did those particular games. I know he did previous ones. But yeah, James Earl Jones, what a absolutely amazing career he's had, and the impact that he's had on all of us. So rest in peace, James Earl Jones. Will be sorely missed, but 93, he's had a fantastic life, had a fantastic career, and he leaves, I think, what can only be said, an amazing legacy behind that is not only affecting us that are here now, but it's going to affect generations to come when they get to watch things like The Lion King and Star Wars and other bits and pieces that he's been in, and that impact is going to roll forth for a very long time to come. Joey, thank you very much indeed, buddy, for jumping on and just having a quick, lovely chat to celebrate James Earl Jones and the impact that he's had, and the impact that Vader had is because of that on us. I really appreciate that. Tell everybody at home exactly where we can find Krypton to Order on podcast.
Sure. And thank you very much for asking me to come on to do this episode. Happy to do it. Happy to get the invite. That was really great. So thank you for thinking of me to do this.
No problem.
And people can find Krypton to Alderaan. We have been doing a lot of work on YouTube recently. That's where I've been putting most of my effort. So Krypton to Alderaan on YouTube. But you could get our podcast wherever you get podcasts, and check us out on Instagram too. We could use some more Instagram people to engage with. So yeah, check us out on Instagram.
Absolutely. Make sure you're getting out there. Make sure you're giving Krypton's Order on a follow on every platform you can. As he said, the podcast is available across Spotify, Apple, everywhere else, to be fair. If you click on their link tree on their Instagram page, you will see the long list of sites where you can pick up the podcast. So you've got no excuse, really, to not be on there and listening to Krypton's Order on. As for myself at the Galactic Core podcast, as I say every episode, if you're not following us by now, what the hell are you doing? You got all through the episode, click that follow button, click that subscribe button. You can find on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitch. Like I said, I am technically in the middle of a bit of a hiatus at the moment, simply because, as Joey kindly mentioned at the start of the show, I'm a new father now, so having a bit of a break. I will be back in the very near future, and I'm probably going to be doing a lot more live streaming episodes as well. So that's going to be an exciting change to the Galactic Core podcast moving forward. But I'm not 100% sure the next time I'll be back, to be fair. But I just wanted to jump on and basically give my thanks and celebrate James Earl Jones. So, Joey, thank you very much indeed. But as absolutely always, everyone,
the Force will be with you always.
Thanks for tuning in to the Galactic Core Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. But until next time, go get your geek on.